I already know a bunch of the tentacles, I imagine there's a bunch more. But everything in my world would be keyed off of a given date. That date is their cancellation, their renewal, whatever term they call it. That's the date they're no longer a member. I mean, the day after would technically be the date they're no longer a member. So part of this process would be, okay, if we're going to target everything off of that and consistently give them the same behavior, that we carve out given time frames around that. And put something here. So these are quarters, whatever. That basically, if we know a given member on a given day, and that maybe 5,000 of them are going to cancel out this day, we give an e-channel 60 days to 30 days to work on. You know, just, and that may be warming them up, that may be whatever we decide working means. We warm them up. At that point, and I do think there needs to be a window there for previous. So if it goes into a telephone channel after that, you're watching, you know exactly the behavior that's going on, you know the communications are going out, you know how many people have sort of fallen off and early adopters or whatever have picked up and said, I'm going to be a member, so you can watch your attrition rates coming down as you're leading into telephone and begin to plan. And then we give, I would like to personally see it sort of 30 days out, 30 days after, a very fairly condensed window where we work that lead. And again, we can, at this point, we have the data. We can give you the data, for instance, to know how many are beginning to fall toward the end of it. We can give you like a little bell curve of where the members are as they flow through so that you can manage resources and make sure they're getting all the touches they need. Same kind of thing in the field would be to give a 30-day preview for the last 30 days it's sitting in TSR, so you guys prep up, manage for it, and then again, you get 60 days to work it. If they haven't renewed through all of that, maybe a little electronic channel here down at the end again, saying, your last shot, man. It's like after this, we've already canceled them in my world. The next day we cancel them. We can still function, in my thinking, this way. But again, just sort of get them through, leverage the least expensive channels first, leverage them up to the most expensive, which again optimizes the revenue for the business. But again, at the end, really here they're canceled, but after that, we're just not going to continue to expend energy on them because we know at that point we would have touched on the 6 or 7 or 8 magic times that we've looked at. So I don't know. I just think key elements of it again. Everybody gets a consistent set of behavior. 30 days out, every single member gets the exact same communication. The thing I like about this type of approach anyway is that it allows management, the knobs, and to tune. We can decide 30 days isn't right for this message, 60 days is right for this message, 30 days, and we can optimize that, the renewal opportunities throughout it. We can sit here and say, well, 60 days isn't enough, I need 72, or whatever. We can begin to expand and contract, squeeze elements in and out. But again, I think one of my pet peeves, maybe I'm the only one of my pet peeves is we have a member count that's only accurate 4 days a week or 4 days a year. You know, at the first day of every quarter, we actually know what our member count is. Every other day is wrong. And so I think no matter, one of the things I would like to see us change is at some point, whether we do something like this or not, is to get the member canceled the day after when they're really canceled. Now, that doesn't mean we have to change our commission. We can still say for 2 quarters after cancellation, we're still going to commission this way. But at least that lets me and whomever send leadership, John and everybody else, an actual member count every day. We know what it is, because there are other calculations based off that. And the only other thing I'll sort of throw out into the pool of ideas is I do think, and one of the things I've heard multiple times very loudly from John more than anybody is that he really wants the ability to dynamically allocate and move inventory around. Obviously our systems right now are very restrictive on that front. You can't decide today that all of a sudden we want to do, it's done, we're done for a quarter, you know. So I think that opens up sort of a Pandora's box in my head, in my way of thinking too, because it's like, okay, well, first of all, beginning inventory, that doesn't mean anything. If tomorrow I can change that number on you and you're never going to meet your goal because of what I changed. But at the end of the day, it does give management, again, a key tool to make sure every member's touched the appropriate number of times and that we've got the channels optimized. So while we think in terms of today of fairly rigid, it's in my silo and it's walled off, it's mine, you know, that type of approach. And it's not wrong, it's just the way it's been built. I think in this world, we have to open that up and say, all right, well, you know, we're gonna, I call it liquid inventory, we're gonna, you know, be able to turn the knobs and move this inventory back and forth in and out of the channels that's most optimized for the organization's benefit to get that member in. So again, I think that's a lot to throw on the table. I'll shut up with that, but I think that, again, it's a separate topic in many respect to the actual sort of cycle. But even if we don't do that, I think we've got to find a way to move inventory around a lot easier, which again, clearly has a lot of impact on, I mean, I think revenue. I mean, what is that?
Are we not able to do that with the new Exigo or, when we looked at Salesforce years ago, one of the big pluses of that, or what we perceived as a big plus, was the dashboards and being able to see at any given time exactly where the inventory was at any given time. And this was years ago, but.
I mean, I know, again, I think.
Is that what
from
you're
my
kind
vantage-
of talking about here?
Yeah,
But
yes and
again,
no.
flexibility and,
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I mean, I think.
you're talking about cycle.
Well, I think obviously there's a reporting component
Yeah.
to it. I mean, yeah, that's what I'm saying, is I'm kind of blending two concurrent thoughts here, but the other one is just, again, think of, again, I've been piggybacking off the liquid inventory, so think of 3 or 4 streams.
Yeah,
And the ability to basically have a little,
flexibility and
I'm gonna pump some of that
moving.
into this stream because we, you know, they're underutilized, they're overtaxed, we gotta.
Or you
make
might
this-
have a reason to get something in that, something happens in the business environment that you wanna pour more into
Right.
a
I mean,
certain channel.
and just to be clear, what I'm looking at is, what we're gonna do internally to the best of our ability is we're gonna build those tools. And the reason we can do that is, the fact is, if we wanna stay with the model we have right now, that just is the decision point of when you turn the pipe on. Turn it on every quarter, and we'll move the inventory, and then don't change it in between, and then we can sort of stick with the existing models. But at least my goal is to get the tools, so that if you want it in the middle of the quarter, you can turn the valve back the other way and push some inventory around. But again, the minute you make that decision, you've got there. I mean, I don't know every nuance because again, I know TSR is still black box to me to some degree. Field still is a black box, especially on the comp side. I'm still lost in that. But you know, I know there are tentacles out there that would just blow up stuff. But
Is there any way to test
I
this?
mean,
it's
Yeah.
gonna be hard, because you're affecting inventory. I mean, you're affecting the way to test it would be possibly to carve off a whole geographic region and say, well, we're gonna treat them differently. But it would be hard to just sort of piecemeal this one out.
Well, one way you could test it is with the process that we were talking about with the 10 cities. You know, because that's new and we've never had it in the sales channel before. So that would be one way that you could just test compensation and everything else that went along with it. Renewal dates.
Or 5 of the 10, or, yeah, I
Or
mean,
whatever,
or
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, I mean, 10 is not that many. You can test them all and just work out something similar to that and see how it works.
that assumes there are already members.
Pardon me?
That assumes that they're members, though.
That's what I said. I think.
And then that's like a year out.
Well, yeah,
Not that-
but
not
with
that
this,
we
you
would
can't do
it
this
tomorrow, but
this year anyways, and it's affecting number of reps that you would keep, how would you sustain them, that type of thing.
Yeah.
How do you
It's
sustain
long-term. It is a
those?
very long-term idea.
Yeah, it's a long-term idea, so that's why I was thinking that might help, because this is kind of long-term what we were talking about for the 10 big cities too.